By the late 1950s, the sports car craze in America was starting to wind down, but that didn't stop Ford from introducing the Thunderbird in 1955. It was 175 inches long on a 102-inch wheelbase and weighed 3,100 pounds, powered by a 4.8-liter 292 V8 with 193 to 198 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque, with either a Ford-O-Matic or an overdrive 4-speed. With the manual, 60 took less than 9 seconds, and it could do a 17-second quarter mile with a top speed over 115. For 1956, power was up to 202 horsepower and 289 pound-feet of torque, and a bigger 5.1-liter 312 was made optional, with up to 225 horsepower and 324 pound-feet of torque. And a limited supercharged 312 version was offered for 1957. Studebaker's low-slung coupe was restyled in 1956 to become the Hawk. On a 121-inch wheelbase, it was 204 inches long and weighed 2,800 to 3,400 pounds. Prices ranged from $2,000 to $3,400, with a full range of engines from a 3-liter 186 cubic inch 6 with 101 horsepower to 4.2-liter 259 cubic inch, 4.7-liter 289 cubic inch, or 5.8-liter 352 cubic inch Packard V8, ranging from 170 to 275 horsepower. In 1958, Packard got its own version of the Hawk. It started at $3,600, was an inch longer, and 200 pounds heavier, and the only engine was a supercharged 289 Studebaker V8 with 275 horsepower and 333 pound-feet of torque, moving it to 60 in just over 7 seconds, and the quarter mile in the mid-15s, with a top speed over 130. Chevrolet's Corvette got updated styling for 1956. The year after, it had upgraded to a V8 and a 4-speed. For 1957, that V8 was up to 4.6 liters or 283 cubic inches. An output ranged from a 220 horsepower, 300 pound-foot of torque 4-barrel version to a 283 horsepower, 290 pound-feet of torque fuel-injected version. The car was 168 inches long on a 102-inch wheelbase and weighed about 3,000 pounds, with prices starting just under $3,500. A fuel-injected model could hit 60 in under 7 seconds, do a mid-15-second quarter mile, and reach speeds near 140 miles an hour. The British Aston Healey Sprite arrived in 1958. It was only 137 inches long on an 80-inch wheelbase, and it was powered by an 850cc, 45 horsepower, 52 pound-foot of torque engine, costing nearly 700 pounds. Top speed was nearly 85 miles an hour, with a 19.5-second 0 to 60. 1955 gave us the MGA. It was 156 inches long on a 94-inch wheelbase, weighing 2,000 pounds. The 1500 inline 4 put out 68 horsepower and 77 pound-feet of torque. 60 came in under 15 seconds, and the quarter mile in under 20, with a top speed over 90 miles an hour. The optional 455 rear axle would knock almost 5 seconds off the acceleration time. Lotus introduced the Elite in 1957. It was 148 inches long on an 88-inch wheelbase, weighing 1,100 pounds. Its 1.2-liter produced 75 horsepower and 82 pound-feet of torque and got nearly 30 miles per gallon. Just over 1,000 were made, with a top speed over 100 miles an hour and a sub-10-second 0 to 60. For 1955, the Morgan Plus 4 got a Triumph 2-liter inline 4 with 90 to 95 horsepower and 117 pound-feet of torque. It was 145 inches long on a 96-inch wheelbase, weighing 1,900 pounds. A test car costing just over 1,000 pounds got 23 miles per gallon, did 60 around 10 seconds, and reached 100 miles an hour. From 1956 to 1958, Alvis made 31 TC-108Gs. On a 112-inch wheelbase, they were 189 inches long, using a 3-liter inline 6 with 104 horsepower and 163 pound-feet of torque, and weighing 3,200 pounds. Top speed was over 90 miles an hour, 60 took 13.5 seconds, and the quarter mile 19.5. The 1955 Triumph TR3 was 151 inches long on an 88-inch wheelbase, and weighed 2,100 pounds. Its 2-liter inline 4 had 95 horsepower, and it cost 950 pounds. 60 took less than 11 seconds, it got 23 miles per gallon, and could reach 105 miles an hour. The AC Asica was a hardtop version of the Ace. Introduced in 1954, 328 would be made over 10 years. Initially offered with the 90 horsepower AC 2-liter 6, starting in 1956 there was a Bristol version with an 120 horsepower, 122 pound-feet of torque 2.6 liter. As such, it was on a 90-inch wheelbase, was 153 inches long, and weighed 2,100 pounds. The Bristol specification added $1,000 to the Asica's $5,400 price tag in the United States. In the UK, the base car cost just over 1,700 pounds. 60 took nearly 9 seconds, and the quarter mile 17. Top speed was 110. Bristol's 406 was 196 inches long on a 114-inch wheelbase and weighed 3,000 pounds. The standard 2.2-liter inline-six had 105 horsepower and 129 pound-feet of torque. The sportier Zagato had 130 horsepower and 132 pound-feet of torque, did 60 in under 9 seconds, and could do more than 115 miles an hour. Jensen's 541 of 1954 to 1959 was 176 inches long on a 105-inch wheelbase and weighed 2,700 pounds. Its 4-liter inline-six had 135 horsepower and 209 pound-feet of torque. It cost more than 2,100 pounds, 60 took just over 10 seconds, and the top speed was over 115 miles an hour. Allard's K3 Palm Beach Mark II of 1956 used a Ford 3.4-liter V8 with 95 horsepower and 160 pound-feet of torque. It had a 15.5-second 0 to 60 and a top speed over 95 miles an hour. Soon, a Jaguar inline-six of the same size with 180 horsepower was also offered. And by 1957, Jaguar itself was up to a XK150, costing more than 2,100 pounds and getting 18 miles per gallon. It was 177 inches long on a 102-inch wheelbase, weighing 3,000 pounds. More than 9,000 would be made. There was a standard 3.4-liter with 190 horsepower and 230 pound-feet of torque, and an SE with 210 horsepower and 313 pound-feet of torque. With a claimed top speed near 150, they would be road-tested to 60 in around 8 seconds. Aston Martin's DB Mark III was 172 inches long on a 99-inch wheelbase, weighing 3,000 pounds. Its 2.9-liter typically produced 162 to 178 horsepower, and of 551 made, 10 high-output tri-carb 195 horsepower versions were ordered. Prices started near $7,500, and a test car reached 60 in under 9.5 seconds and topped out at 120. From France, the Renault Caravelle, or Flow Ride, was introduced in 1958. It was 168 inches long on an 89-inch wheelbase and 1,800 pounds, using an 850cc inline-4 with 33 horsepower and 43 pound-feet of torque. It could nearly reach 75 miles an hour, did 60 in 27 seconds, and eventually 36,000 would be made. Alpine introduced the A106 in 1955. It was 150 inches long on an 83-inch wheelbase and weighed 1,200 pounds. The 750cc engine was available in 21, 30, and 43 horsepower versions. Top speed was around 85 and 60, 17.5 seconds. The Simca Sport Plain Seal, or Open Sky, arrived in 1956. It had a 96-inch wheelbase, was 168 inches long, and weighed 2,100 pounds. The 1300 produced 56 horsepower and 67 pound-feet of torque for a top speed over 85 miles an hour and 60 in 17.5 seconds. The 1957 Bugatti Type 252 was the last of the original Bugattis, but it never made it past the prototype stage. Its proposed dual overhead cam 1.5-liter inline-4 had 120 horsepower. There were 54 Talbot-Lago 2500 T14 LS Sport Coupes made starting in 1955, putting an end to Talbot-Lago. They used a 98-inch wheelbase, were 165 inches long, and initially used their own 120 horsepower inline-4, although later models had V8s of a similar size, provided by either BMW with 138 horsepower or by Simca with 95 horsepower. The Facel Vega Sport of 1958 had your choice of Chrysler Hemi V8s, 4.5-liter 200 horsepower 272 pound-feet of torque, 4.9-liter 250 horsepower 304 pound-feet of torque, and 5.8-liter with 325 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque, which took 6.5 seconds to get to 60 and less than 15 to do the quarter mile. Top speed was 135. In Germany, you could get an NSU-Prinz Sport starting in 1958. With nearly 21,000 being made, it could do almost 80 miles an hour with its 583cc twin. The American market version had 36 horsepower and 36 pound-feet of torque and hit 60 in a little over 22 seconds. Auto Union's DKW 1000 Sport of 1958 was 164 inches long on a 93-inch wheelbase and weighed 2,100 pounds. Its inline-3 produced 55 horsepower, got it to 60 in 21.5 seconds, and could exceed 85 miles an hour. Less than 7,000 would be made. In 1955, Porsche upgraded the 356 to the 356A. The popular engine was the 1.6-liter with 69 horsepower and 81 pound-feet of torque. But there was a more powerful 1600S Speedster. Its 87 horsepower could reach near 110 and took less than 11.5 seconds to get to 60. And the 1500 GS Carrera had 99 horsepower, reaching speeds over 115 miles an hour, and it had a 9.5 second 0 to 60. And there was also a smaller 1300cc engine with as little as 44 horsepower. BMW had the 503, a coupe that was 187 inches long on a 112-inch wheelbase and weighed 3,300 pounds. It used a 3.2-liter V8 with 138 horsepower and 164 pound-feet of torque and cost $5,000. It could nearly reach 110 with a 10.5 second 0 to 60. Or you could spend a little bit more starting in 1956 and get a cut-down roadster version as the 507. It was only 174 inches long on a 98-inch wheelbase, weighing 2,900 pounds. Its 3.2-liter had 148 horsepower and 173 pound-feet of torque, taking it to over 120 miles an hour and to 60 in under 9 seconds. But only 252 were built. Mercedes introduced the Gullwing 300 SL in 1954, and a roadster version was added in 1957. They were 178 inches long on a 95-inch wheelbase and weighed 3,300 to 3,500 pounds. The coupe was about $6,800 and the roadster close to $11,000. With 240 horsepower and 217 pound-feet of torque, top speed was over 130, 60 took just over 7 seconds, and the quarter mile in the mid-15s. The Italian Fiat 1200 TV Spider of 1957 used a 92-inch wheelbase, was 154 inches long, and weighed about 2,000 pounds. With 54 horsepower and 60 pound-feet of torque, it could do almost 90 and did a mid-19 second 0 to 60. Alfa Romeo's Giulietta Spider was 154 inches long on an 89-inch wheelbase and 1,900 pounds. Its 1.3-liter inline-4 had 64 horsepower and 80 pound-feet of torque for speeds over 90 miles an hour and a sub-13 second 0 to 60. The Lancia Aurora V24 Spider of 1957 had 112 horsepower and 127 pound-feet of torque from its 2500cc V6. It was 167 inches long on a 97-inch wheelbase and could do more than 105 miles an hour and 60 in the high 12s. Maserati introduced the road-going 3500 GT in 1957. Coupe versions were 188 inches long on a 102-inch wheelbase, weighing near 3,200 pounds. Output of the 3.4-liter inline-6 was roughly 230 horsepower, although sources vary. Top speed was 135, 60 took 7.5 seconds, and the quarter mile came in the mid-15s. Variations of the Ferrari 250 kept the brand's reputation expanding, and the long-wheelbase 250 GT California was aimed specifically at the U.S. market. It was on a 102-inch wheelbase and used a 3-liter V12 producing 237 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. 50 would be made prior to 1960. It could do nearly 135 miles an hour, got to 60 in under 7 seconds, and the quarter mile in the low 15s. Or you could opt for one of the few fiberglass sports cars from Sweden. such as the original Saab Sonnet, of which 6 were made between 1955 and 1957. It only weighed 1,300 pounds and used a 750cc 2-stroke inline 3 with 58 horsepower. That was supposedly good for 100 miles an hour. While there were 68 Volvo P1900s for 1956, it had 69 horsepower and 76 pound-feet of torque from its 1.4-liter inline 4, was 166 inches long on a 95-inch wheelbase, and weighed 2,100 pounds, and could nearly reach 110 miles an hour. A diverse group of vehicles, unlike what the segment looks like today, seeing both the beginning and ending of many classic names. So as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below and like and subscribe.